Donald Trump yesterday, giving quite a surprise briefing in the White House press room, where he talked about how great his week had been and how, his administration keeps winning. So he's clearly trying to dress this up. But I think certainly as we get more intelligence, and that's probably most reliable as to what's happened to the centres, it will tell us whether Trump is correct to say obliterated. And as you say, the fact that in that press briefing, he's now saying, well, I could just bomb them again. He's covering for all options.
Those bunker buster bombs may have harmed Iran's attempts to make for itself a fairly primitive nuclear weapon. But there is no sign of the large quantity of enriched uranium, which would be the most crucial part of that process. I don't know who to believe. Last week, the BBC doubted Iran was after a nuclear weapon at all. This week, it's saying Donald Trump's raids may have increased its commitment to building one. Where on earth do we go, Julie?
I think that people believe what they believe, unless they're experts in this particular issue of nuclear bombs and uranium, which, I'm not, depending on whether they like Trump or not. And I think that it's the same. It's ideologically driven, the opinion and the so-called facts, rather than driven by what we know and the evidence that we've got. And I've read a couple of articles looking at either side of the scenario, and I can't make head or tail of any of it, quite frankly. All I do know is that we're living in a world where leftists can support Iran and follow the hashtag Team Iran because they're pro-Palestinian and have such a pathological hatred of Israel that they will believe anything, quite frankly, that they're told, as long as it helps their cause. So I don't know.
Alice, Donald Trump has said that not ruled out bombing Iran again. What do you fathom from this morass?
It's very difficult, as Julie says, to make head nor tail of it. But I do think if they weren't trying to make a nuclear bomb, then why are they enriching the uranium in the heart of a mountain? If it's just for civilian purposes. And I'm with Julie as well, that I think if you just zoom out and look at the morality of this conflict, of course, Israel's behavior in Gaza has been absolutely appalling. But Israel is a democracy. It's a liberal democracy. It's the best place in the Middle East to be gay. It's the best place in the Middle East to be a woman. It's the best place in the Middle East to be an Arab. And Iran is a theocratic dictatorship. So I think you have to zoom out and look at the morality of this and pick your side.
The other point of this, Julie, is that Trump seemed perfectly happy to have another go at bombing Iran if it turns out that early intelligence report, which suggested they probably hadn't done that much damage at all, turns out to be true. Do we want this to escalate? Do we want him to go in again? Or does that make the world a safer place? Or does it make it a less safe place?
I doubt that we could argue that it would make the world a safer place. It's absolutely crazy, the escalation of this. We have to look at the history of the conflict and of the fact that Israel, of whom I'm extremely critical, and I think Netanyahu, the overreach has been obscene, and I agree with Alice that the terrible human rights abuses towards the Gazans. But I think if we actually look at how this escalation can play out, it's terrifying. It truly is. The problem is that with Trump, in my view, we can't tell. We can't tell whether or not he's making a decision based on intelligence, on verified intelligence, and being wholly responsible and recognizing that there is no other alternative, or whether this is more posturing, macho posturing, which will please the American public. Because I don't think this man is ideological at all. I mean, I've heard people talk about him as being anti-LGBT. I don't think that this man has got any ideology in the slightest. I think that he's reacting to particular issues and making particular decisions based on what will gain him popularity and appease the American public, most of whom understand nothing about foreign policy. And I understand that's a contentious statement as well.
New Washington editor Katy Balls, who joins us from there right now. Katy, reflections on the US bunker-busting bomb, the attack on Iran's nuclear program. We heard that preliminary intelligence report, which was much hyped over here, saying it didn't cause that much damage. Donald Trump getting very angry about people who alleged such a dreadful thing. And now his comment that he'd be perfectly happy to bomb them again. What's going on?
Yes, so as you say, complete fury from the White House this week when this report emerged, which was a preliminary intelligence report, and suggesting that when Donald Trump had said the words obliterated, it perhaps wasn't actually the case if this report is to be believed, because the damage may have just set around back by a couple of months rather than obliterated. Now, the truth is that as with intelligence and also what happens soon after a strike, no one is really quite sure how much damage is done, but Donald Trump is incredibly confident that a lot has been done. And it's almost reopened, I think, what we saw a lot in the first term of the Trump presidency, which is this fight with the intelligence services, this feeling amongst Trump supporters that the deep state, as they would call it, is against them and out to get them. And you had Donald Trump yesterday giving quite a surprise briefing in the White House press room, where he talked about how great his week had been and how, you know, his administration keeps winning. So he's clearly trying to dress this up. But I think certainly as we get more intelligence, and that's probably most reliable as to what's happened to the centers, it will tell us whether Trump is correct to say obliterated. And as you say, the fact that in that press briefing, he's now saying, well, I could just bomb them again. He's covering for all options, but it certainly, I think, is, if it is the case that it is not actually as far as he has claimed, I think it is a little bit difficult for the president, because we've seen all his cabinet have to dance around the way they talk about this too.
Yes, his entire modus operandi seems to be keep them guessing all the time, and it's proved quite successful sometimes. But the Senate is trying to curb the president's power to use further military force in the war. Will that be successful?
So far, no. And I think generally speaking, at least until we get to midterms, these efforts are, limited in how much road they have. Because you have Donald Trump has power in Senate, Congress, and therefore there was an attempt by the Democrats to say, we want to prevent Donald Trump from taking independent action in the future. That has not come to pass so far. It was defeated in a vote of 53-47. The Senate is Republican held. I think the interesting question is, depending how midterms go, if the Democrats can claw back, some power whether Congress or Senate, do things start to feel a bit different and there's more space? For now, it is pretty much Trump's world when it comes to these decisions, unless he really upsets the Republicans. But that hasn't happened on this instance. And I think generally speaking, the feeling in DC amongst the Republicans is there is broad support for what Donald Trump has done in Iran. They think the mission was successful. There's lots of anger of what they see as fake news, the deep state, intelligence service, and those out to get him. But it's actually been quite unifying for the Republican Party as a whole.
Right. And are the Democrats doing better in the polls? Do they look like they might make gains in the midterms?
Well, I think there is a feeling of optimism from the Democrats that they just naturally might make some gains, because if you look at what's happening with the US economy, yes, you just look at some of those difficulties, they think that that could work in their favor. However, the thing that the Democrats are really talking about when it comes to electoral fortunes this week is what's been happening in New York with the Democrat primary for the New York mayoral race, which has seen a candidate on the left come out of nowhere. And I think that has meant that the centrist Democrats, at least, have started to get quite worried again that perhaps they'll make some gains in the midterms, but they might not be the gains that they want, or they might encourage the wrong message when it comes to how to approach 2028.
Yeah, very difficult. And very quickly, I noticed the president has cancelled all US trade talks with Canada, citing what he calls the egregious digital service tax. Very quickly, what's he up to?
So we know this deadline is coming when Donald Trump said all these countries need to come make deals with me. And the only deal so far is the UK-US trade deal. Donald Trump keeps being asked, what happens if you don't have deals in this deadline? And he's like, well, it's up to the president. His team will say he can do what he wants effectively. That's the common theme. Canada, he said no more negotiations, and he's lashed out the digital services tax. And I think this is a potential warning to other countries because we know that Donald Trump doesn't like it. It's something that the UK had to look at when they were talking about their deal. I think the question is, what's the punishment when it comes to the tariffs that Donald Trump plans to put on? And also, there's still the question is, does Donald Trump have the legal power to do all the tariffs he wants? Because he's had a few Supreme Court wins over the past week or so, but one that's still looming, one that's still working its way up through the courts is whether he actually can bring in some of the tariffs he's put in the way he has.